you'll have to bear with me. I'm 6 months pregnant, and this is the best possible scenario, is sitting on a stool for the next 3 months anyway. So today is about a mountaintop experience. It's about the mountaintop experience of Jesus. It's about the mountaintop experience of the disciples. It's about the mountaintop experience of Wells and his family. It's about the mountaintop experience that we are all on before we enter into a new liturgical season of Lent. And while that is so incredible, and while it is so important that we embrace the mountaintop experiences as much as we can, it is equally important for us to remember that while God is so clearly visible to us in these mountaintop experiences, dazzling white, glorified, that we also have to come down off the mountain. And even when we come down off the mountain, God is there. And that is some of the most important information that we need to remember on a regular basis. Because as wonderful as it is for us to be here today, celebrating a baptism, remembering our own baptismal vows, getting ready and celebrating before we head into Lent, the majority of our lives are not necessarily mountaintop. The majority of our lives are spent discerning through harder moments. And yet, God is with us in those harder moments. So I want to tell you a little bit about a mountaintop experience I had, because I think it really resonated with the group of 2nd and 3rd graders we had here earlier at the 8:30 service. But I know all of you all have similar experiences in some shape and fashion. When I was probably 2nd or 3rd grade myself, I went to a girls' camp. And I went for at least 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, I ate my favorite foods. I sang some of my very favorite songs about God with my friends from camp. I never had to brush my hair, which was amazing. I always came back. My mom said I came back looking a little Rastafarian because I refused to brush my hair. But it was the most glorious time. I was out in the woods riding horses. I felt so close to God. I had this really incredible community of women, and I felt so close to the divine that this was the place that God was calling me to be. And yet, that was only one season for me, that season of being at this camp. And then I had to leave, right? My wonderful parents came and they picked me up. And while I had wonderful parents, it was a downer coming home from camp. It was a huge downer, and I could not process it that well. I thought every single moment should be when we are just at the very utmost high, where God is so clearly present in our lives. Like every moment should be that way. Wouldn't it be incredible if every moment God was so clearly present to us? And that's just not the reality we live in. Even though it's the reality I think we yearn for. We hear it this morning. We hear it in Peter's voice when he says, oh, well, obviously, look how incredible things are right here. We've got some of the utmost prophets. We have Jesus, who is clearly a big deal right now. I mean, he's definitely different. I think this is the time where we really get to see Jesus for who Jesus is. So Peter obviously thinks we should stay here. We should camp out here. Let's build some space for us to just really hunker down. And that's not what happens. They are called down off the mountain. And like so many of us know, they enter into this season of discerning the reality of God, and it is not that easy. It is a much harder moment. It is a moment when they are about to enter into one of the hardest moments they've ever experienced as disciples, as followers of Jesus. And coming off that mountain, just like the disciples, just like the followers of Jesus, they are invited into a very different season. And that season, even though it isn't as glorious, Even though it's not as dazzling, it is an incredibly important time for them to discern who God is in the world and God's character. And most importantly, it is a time for them to realize, just like all of us are invited to realize, that even though God is most clear in those mountaintop experiences, God is equally present in the valleys. God is equally present when we are trying to decipher where God is calling us, when we're confused about God's identity. God is still very much present to us in those moments. And like the disciples are called in Lent, we too are called to persevere in this next season of Lent. Because I hope that we walk that road along with the disciples, that we walk that road as we are also called into discernment. And it's kind of a valley. It's a time when it is not necessarily glorious. There's a lot less dazzle. There's a lot less clarity in God's reality to us in the world. And during that, we need something else. We need a certain characteristic that is perseverance. So during this time, I want us all to reflect on being fortified as we come down off the mountain. Because it is that which makes it hard that fortifies us. It is those valleys which fortify us in our faith. And that is what I hope we can all walk into as we experience Lent this coming 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how you look at it. So, think about it, consider it, and don't necessarily run away from it, but engage with it in a way that fortifies you, that makes you that much more present to who God is in the valleys, because this won't be the last time. Just as much as we are about to celebrate this incredible mountaintop experience, remember that it's not going to stay, but God is equally present in the valleys. And the more that we discern God's presence in these lower points of our lives, just like the followers are discerning these hard moments in their new season as they follow Jesus down off the mountain and to the cross, we are also called to do that. And in that, we will persevere in our lives as disciples. Amen.